Good afternoon. This is responding to COVID-19 on TTT Live, Chalk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live online on Facebook. I'm DK Rostar. We are speaking about leadership with Monica Rogers-Fletcher, Executive Director of the John Maxwell team. She's here to speak about leadership with us, and it is a very timely conversation because the COVID-19 pandemic has really raised issues of leadership and about leadership, who's doing a good job, who's doing not so good a job. But we're very thankful to have you here, Miss Monica. Good day to you.
Well, good afternoon, DK. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
What are some of the things or issues with regard to leadership that the pandemic has raised, leading through crisis? What are your thoughts thus far?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that, because one of the important things that our mentor and the leader of our team, John Maxwell, did very early in the crisis, way back in March, is to have a virtual summit about leading through crisis. And, you know, he raised some very important issues in there. And one of the first, perhaps, that we could talk about is leading normally is a difficult exercise. It's not easy to lead. Leading is an uphill climb. And in a crisis, that hill just gets steeper. And good leaders help to at least hold things together. Whereas when we are not so good leaders, it's more likely that things may not stay together and things may fall apart. So in a crisis, things tend to be more difficult than in usual times. You know, they say that a leader seldom has 2 good consecutive days. In a crisis, it's a whole lot more than that. It's many more days of challenges that you have to deal with. So in a crisis, your skills as a leader, they're called upon more than in normal times.
And speaking of a crisis, we are in a pandemic. What are some of the lessons to be learned about leadership that you would have observed during this pandemic?
It was very interesting. I must tell you that I don't normally look at all of the news on the different forms of media all the time. But during this crisis, I was forced to. I wanted to know what was going on. And it was easy for me to know what was going on. And I was able to observe, so many good leadership qualities and leadership strategies during this crisis. For example, and I'm speaking specifically about what I observed regarding the pandemic. First of all, there was a very clear vision. It was very clear, this is what we are doing. We are seeking to save lives. Very, very clear vision. And then there was a clear direction. We're seeking to save lives, and this is what we need to do in order for lives to be saved. And this vision, you have a saying that vision leaks, and sometimes you have to repeat it. And I heard people complaining about, well, how many times do we have to hear the same thing? But the fact about the matter is that we heard it, and we heard it often. So communication was always there. There was transparency, there was communication. What I particularly liked is that we actually led, meaning we didn't seek to coerce or to force or intimidate people to do things, but we rather tried to persuade people to do things. We gave people information so that they could understand why they were being asked to do this or to do that. And we had experts, really good, solid experts available to us to explain, what was going on. There was always explanations about why we needed to do this, why this was not a good idea, why this was the recommended step to be taken. And it was they looked at the big picture, made sure that we took care of the people, about them. It wasn't about those who were trying to navigate for us through this crisis. And they did that. They navigated for us through this crisis. But it was about the big picture. It was about the people and taking care of their needs, ensuring that what they required during this crisis, all those details were were taken care of. I mean, nobody's perfect. Not every single need was met, but the majority of the needs were met. And then what I particularly loved was those times when we were affirming people. We had all those days when we were extending our appreciation to the healthcare and the essential personnel who were there serving for us so well. And that affirmation was always there for the people who were serving and taking us through this crisis. So there was a heart of service, a heart of responding, even a bit of vulnerability from the people leading us through this, saying, look, sometimes you don't have all the answers, but we're sharing with you the answers that we do have. So I thought there were so many good lessons that I observed during as we navigated through this crisis. And I would really love to see that a recognition that these strategies work and that perhaps we could keep some of them as we continue to lead our country into better times.
And that point makes me smile in terms of trying to keep some of these things. It makes you beg the question, so what was happening before in terms of having, we're not necessarily saying that there wasn't a clear vision or direction, but it seems as though there was a laser-like focus in terms of what it is we're doing. A great deal of people also commented, as you did, about the amount of experts that they were made accessible to the public in terms of giving the information, as opposed to saying, having a talking head or a line minister saying, well, my people said this. You actually saw the people who had that knowledge and they were able to lend their expertise directly as opposed to using the minister as a mouthpiece. What is it about a crisis that kind of peels away those extra layers or levels and allows you to just kind of bore down and attack this with laser-like focus?
Many things to it, but I would say, a lot of people think that we are made in a crisis, but you're not made in a crisis. A crisis reveals who you are. A crisis helps you to focus on what is important, and it helps you to dig deep and find the part of yourself that is best suited to deal with the situation that is confronting us. So in a crisis, that leaders are not made. That's when they show up. And once you consider yourself a leader and you have the welfare of others under your care at heart, I would imagine that the conversation that one would have with themselves is how can I make sure that the people are safe? What can I do to keep people safe? What can I do to minimize the impact of this in our country? And then go about doing what is necessary to make that happen and focusing on what is important to ensure that happens. And when I said earlier about vulnerability, nobody knew how this was going to turn out here in our country. We knew what was going on around the world, but not what was happening here. So we had to figure it out as we went along. And there was that, well, we are not sure, but we will find out. And then coming back afterwards and saying, hey, this is what we found out, and this is what works, and this one we have discovered does not work as well. So in a crisis, that's when we understand what's really inside. If you squeeze an orange, the best you can get out of that is orange juice. If you squeeze a lemon, you get lemon juice. But when you squeeze a person, a leader, and they're under pressure, then we really see who they are. We know then who they are. And in fact, the leader begins to understand who they are inside. And that understanding and that awakening, that enlightenment is something that as a leader, we can hold on to that as we go forward in our leadership role.
I'm very happy that you're talking about going forward, going through, going past. What are some of the opportunities that you see leadership-wise that the pandemic has presented in the context that you're saying that leaders aren't necessarily made during a crisis, but as much as revealed or they show up during a crisis? What are some of the opportunities, the leadership opportunities?
Well, I think, as we talked about earlier, what worked in the crisis, the measures that we used, the way we navigated, the way we treated people, all of those are opportunities to see that real leading is not about manipulating people or intimidating people, but it is about persuading people that this is good for all of us. This is going to make us come out of this successful, and use that information, because this has happened and we have seen the results and we have got buy-in from the majority of the population. This has in fact happened. This is a lesson that we could hold on to. What can we take from this in terms of a leader's role and the way that a leader should lead going forward? What are the behaviors? What's the thinking? What are the perspectives that we could take from this to as we go forward? We have this feeling that a leader is the boss and what they say goes. But we have seen that, yes, the leader has the full responsibility, but there are so many other experts that can support them and share their own knowledge and expertise.
And there's so many other things that we want to speak about, but we do it after the break. So we ask you to stay with us. Monica Rogers-Fletcher, Executive Director of the John Maxwell team, speaking about leadership in this responding to COVID program. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are discussing leadership in this responding to COVID program on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live online. We're doing it with Monica Rogers-Fletcher, Executive Director of the John Maxwell team. Now, Monica, I cut you off. You were talking about the fact that the leader doesn't need to necessarily be perceived as the big boss. And that also, I want you to continue on that line, please, because many times it seems as though it's art, it's science, it's somewhere in between whether or not we decide to use the carrot or the stick. So in terms of carrying your team forward to maximize that potential, what are your thoughts on that in terms of that interplay of punitive / encouraging, inspiring?
Yeah. Well, many of us in this country, we work very hard. We're very skilled people. We work very hard to reach the top and to be the leader. And we have the position and we have the title. And we think, oh yes, I have arrived and I'm the boss and what I say goes. And I think if leaders are honest, they would admit that it doesn't exactly work like that. Just being the boss doesn't always mean that when you give an instruction or you give an order that everybody follows it. It does not work like that. And I think in this crisis, we could see that simply giving people instructions was not going to work. We had to do more than that. And so we have to move away from this. I'm the leader, I have the title, I have the position, so therefore what I say, you must do. We are dealing with people. We are dealing with people, not dealing with equipment and machinery, we are dealing with people. And people have their own feelings, people have their own mindsets, and we have to understand the people and build relationships with the people so that we can get them to buy in to where it is that we want to go. And if we don't get that buy-in, we are not going to be able to lead them successfully. So essentially, that's a key lesson that we can take away from this crisis. Just being a boss isn't completely effective in a situation such as this pandemic and in many other situations, in businesses, in organizations, where we need to build relationships with the people that we are leading so that, in effect, they agree to go along with our vision and they agree to go along in the direction that we are taking them in.
But one of the things I think the pandemic has also shown is the fact that even though you may be an assigned superior, you have people underneath you. There may be different departments and there are leaders within those different departments. And to me, it makes sense to have people who are capable of being autonomous, using their initiative and going forward, and that builds the entire organization. But that leads me to the question though, in terms of leadership, where does that start? Is it something in the head or is it in the heart?
Or could be both. Could be both, DK. Then there's leading others, and then there is leading self. And there's a saying we have that when you lead yourself, you lead with your head. And when you lead others, you lead from the heart. But some people, the way they are wired, and you know that because we've talked about this, you know that I'm very passionate about the Maxwell method of disc behavioral analysis. And when people do that profile, they understand that some people are naturally wired as leaders. They are naturally wired to take charge. And so there are some people who would naturally take charge no matter what is going on. And there are others who won't. There are others that are more reserved and they wouldn't take charge. So you tend to find that in leadership positions, we have a variety. And some people naturally take charge and they will naturally be very boss-like. And there are other people that will be more gentle and they'll have naturally a more persuasive approach. And however you're wired, know this, we all can learn how to lead more effectively in the positions that we find ourselves with. We can learn how to lead, not just learn the theory of leadership, but learn how to lead. And it's more, let me tell you, good leadership and that leads to success. It's 85% about communication, our behaviors, how our personality, how we negotiate, our character, in effect, who we are, and only 15% about what we know, our skills, our academic qualifications. And think about it. I mean, look at engineers, for example. How many engineers graduate every year? A ton of them. How many of them are successful? That's something we have to look at. I don't have the numbers for you, but I can tell you, not all of them are. In fact, not even the majority of them are. Some are definitely more successful than others. Why? Because it's not just the skill and the qualifications, but it's how they lead, how well they lead. In fact, how well we lead determines how successful not just ourselves, but our organizations and our businesses can be. How well we lead is a lid that restricts how successful our organizations can be. And therefore, if we want our organizations to do well, if we want to do well as a country going forward, we have got to raise the lid of our leaders in our organizations, all of them.
And with that in mind, though, cutting across you, we have about a minute and a half, and I have two things to throw at you. Factors to be mindful of in developing an environment, fostering leaders, and what are the offerings of the Maxwell team?
Okay. I think a simple thing, and I wrote about it in my Success Insight, which if you go to my website, monicarogers-fletcher.com, you can sign up for, is there are 3 questions that leaders need to ask of their followers. And if they get a yes answer to these questions, life will be good. If they get a no answer, the leader knows they have problems. And those 3 questions are, do you care for me? If the answer is no, you can understand the problem. Can you help me? And can I trust you? And as we go forward, if we can get our leaders to just ask those questions of their team members, do you trust me? Do you think I care for you? Do you think I can help you? And seek to get yes answers, then that would be a great start. In terms of what I have to offer, what I, as Monica Rogers-Fletcher, as well as members of the John Maxwell team in Trinidad and Tobago have to offer is a variety of programs on leadership and on communication and definitely on personal growth. In fact, the 2 things that I would recommend right now would be the Leading Through Crisis Mastermind, which can be done virtually. And as well, I would strongly recommend that every single individual, every single company does a DISC program and workshop, a Maxwell method of DISC program and workshop.
And contact information for you to do that, please? And what's the contact information for you to do that? Just before we wrap up.
2 things, you can go to monicarogers-fletcher.com, or you can call me at 678-9557. 678-9557.
Thank you so much. I feel like Timothy Watkins Jr., the Baron. All I have is questions, but I have 3 more. Do you care for me? Do you think I can help you? And do you trust me? Monica Rogers-Fletcher, thank you so much for delving into leadership conversation that is quite needed at this point in time. And we also want to thank you for tuning in. This has been Responding to COVID on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live online.